Now, people have asked how and my family have endured this ordeal, particularly when at times there seemed to be no end in sight. And as Judge Breyer mentioned in our conversation, I have been asked about whether I'd given thought to withdrawing my nomination. And I think Judge Breyer accurately summed up our conversation, because I felt I could not give up. I came to understand that the battle over my confirmation was not simply about me, but raised larger questions that transcended a single nomination. I felt it was important that I not capitulate, because I believe that someone should not be disqualified from the bench simply because they once represented the voiceless and the unpopular rather than the wealthy and the powerful. I believe that judicial nominees should be judged by the depth of their commitment to the rule of law, not simply by the identity of their former clients. I believe that judicial nominees should be judged by the content of their record and not by the color of sound bites and half-truths. And I believe that the judiciary ought to be reflective not only of the diverse demography of our nation, but also the wide range of experiences and perspectives, and therefore that members of both the American Constitutional Society as well as the Federalist Society should be eligible for the bench. And I believe that having the ACLU in one's DNA is not a disease, it is an honor shared by the likes of Felix Frankfurter, Thurgood Marshall, Arthur Goldberg, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I also thought, when I was posed this question about withdrawing, about those who had gone before me and whose struggles took me to where I am. I thought about my parents, my dad, who came to this country in the 1920s with $20 and a suitcase full of consigned goods to build a new future. He successfully built an import business, but never had a chance to fully enjoy the fruits of his labor because he suffered a stroke when I was 9 and fell into a coma until his death some 4 years later. I think about my mother, who was left in China as a child while her parents immigrated to America to start a new day. It wasn't until she was 22 years old that she was finally able to flee a war-torn China and reunite with her family. And when my father was felled by a stroke, how my mother struggled to manage the family business while raising 4 boys as a single mom. And neither my mom or my dad lived to see this day, and I suspect they never would have dreamed that I would be appointed a federal judge. But their courage and perseverance against tough odds and their dedication to family continue to inspire me. I thought about the civil rights movement and Dr. Martin Luther King, whose courage and sacrifices led us to a better place. Like so many of us who grew up in the 60s, I listened to Dr. King's speeches and witnessed the raw face of racial injustice and oppressive brutality. Something touched a nerve and awakened my conscience, and eventually led me to study law and drive my commitment to the pursuit of justice. And I thought about Fred Korematsu, who stood up, not only for himself and 120,000 intern Japanese Americans, but for the Constitution itself. He persevered for 40 years until Judge Patel in his courtroom vacated his conviction after finding the government had deliberately withheld evidence undermining its claim of military necessity. Through it all, Fred never lost faith in this nation or our Constitution. Fred's faith reaffirmed my faith in the justice system. And so I understood that what I endured for some 21 months paled in comparison to the sacrifices of those on whose shoulder I sit. And I knew that to turn back and give up would betray their legacy. Finally, I thought about the reasons why I applied for this position. Early on, I spoke with a number of my colleagues on the bench as to why they aspired to the bench and why they found their jobs rewarding. I heard many thoughtful responses that reflected the kind of selflessness and dedication that I've come to know. But Judge Bill Alsop perhaps said it best with simple eloquence. He said, "I believe in the system." This is the one place where you make decisions based on merits of an argument, not on which party is more powerful or wields greater political influence. And he was right, because in our system of justice, it is possible for a Chinese laundryman named Yik Wo, a small-time offender named Clarence Gideon, a schoolgirl named Linda Brown, or an unemployed welder named Fred Korematsu, to beat seemingly impossible odds to change the course of legal history, and in so doing, change the face of our nation. And therein lies the greatness and the beauty of America, of which we sing. For America's beauty lies not only in her spacious skies, her majestic mountains, or her shining seas. It lies in its founding creed that all men are created equal, and its constitutional promise of equal justice under law. That promise is embodied in the oath I have taken, the oath to administer justice without regard to persons, and to do equal right to the poor and to the rich. It is an oath I am proud to take, and one which I pledge to keep. Thank you.